In Roman mythology, a Koryos descendant tradition are the Salii, who were led by a group of 12 priests known as the Salii Palatini. The Salii were known for their distinctive attire, which included a ceremonial shield and a woolen cape known as laena. The Salii were a group of young warriors in Roman society who underwent initiation rites to prepare them for their roles as adult warriors and members of the community. They were responsible for carrying the sacred shields known as ancilia and holding the feast called Table of the Salii. The Salii, also known as Salians or Salian priests, were referred to as the leaping priests of Mars in the ancient Roman religious context, believed to have been established during the reign of King Numa Pompilius. This group consisted of 12 patrician youths who adorned themselves in the attire of archaic warriors, including an embroidered tunic, a breastplate, a brief red cloak called a paludamentum, a sword, and a spiked headdress known as an apex. They were charged with the 12 bronze shields called ancilia, linked to a thunder god, which, like those of the Mycenaeans, resembled a figure 8. Upon the council of the nymph Egeria, who was the consort of Numa, it was foretold that the preservation of the shield would signify the ascendancy of the people wherever it was kept, making them the preeminent force on earth. Like the Koryos, the Salii were believed to be a group of young men who were selected to undergo training and initiation under the god Mars. Mars is the Roman god of war, and his origins can be traced back to the Proto-Indo-European religion, which was practiced by the ancestors of the Indo-European peoples. Mars has been closely associated with the Koryos tradition and was believed to be the patron of young warriors and initiates. And the wolf was also an important symbol in both the worship of Mars and the Koryos tradition, and it was believed that the Koryos were protected by a wolf during their rites. In the Roman tradition, the worship of Mars was closely linked to military power and conquest, and it was often depicted as a strong, masculine figure who embodied the ideals of martial virtue and prowess. The priests who served Mars, known as the Salii Palatini, performed dances and rituals during the Mars festival in March that were intended to honor the god of war and prepare young men for their roles as warriors. The Salii also performed dances and songs during the month of March in order to honor Quirinus as well. So each year in March, the Salii made a procession around the city, dancing and singing the Carmen Saliari. Ovid, who relates the story of Numa and the heavenly ancilia in his Fasti, found the hymn and the Salian rituals outdated and hard to understand. He also wrote that they would beat daggers on shields to create music. Others stated that they used flutes and tibia. The ritual of the Salii is a war dance or sword dance and has been compared with the Maruts, the Vedic Koryos. And the story of Romulus and the she-wolf also has been linked to the Koryos, a group of young warriors in Indo-European mythology who were associated with the wolf. Mars himself was said to be the head of the Salian dancers, who were made up of the patrician young men. The connection between Romulus and the Koryos can be further seen in the fact that he and his followers were said to have been young, unmarried men who lived on the fringes of society before establishing Rome. Like the Koryos, Romulus and his men were known for their wild and undisciplined behavior, which they eventually channeled into the founding of a great civilization. So this tradition of Koryos was, as I said earlier, taking a far older hunter-gatherer way of life involving animal shamans who used hunting magic, and this became placed into the context of herding societies, where hunting magic gradually became war magic. You can also see this with Romulus and Remus being seers as well, or basically augurs. Romulus and Quirinus being in the older sons Manu, where Ramos, the twin brother who is sacrificed, is Yemu. We can see this also with the wild animals most sacred to Mars. These were, for instance, the woodpecker, the wolf, and the bear, which in the natural lore of the Romans were said always to inhabit the same foothills and woodlands. The wolf being the most important animal connected to Mars. Similarly, in the Norse tradition, such warriors were sometimes called Ulfhetnar, wolf-skinned, and the frenzy warriors wearing the skins of wolves were designated as Ulfhetnin, wolf-coat. The folk legend of the werewolf, the man-wolf, found in many European traditions is probably reminiscent of the wolfish behaviors of these Koryos warrior bands. And Mars's link with the wolf is most famously depicted in the story of his infant sons being nursed by a she-wolf after they were left exposed by order of King Amulius, who feared them due to his usurpation of the throne from their grandfather, Numitor. The woodpecker also provided nourishment to the twins. In Roman art and literature, the wolf was often shown as Mars's animal companion. There's also a statue group depicting Mars in the company of wolves along the Appian Way as well. And finally, during the Battle of Sentinum in 295 BCE, the appearance of the wolf of Mars, Martius Lupus, was also seen as a sign of impending Roman victory, to give another example. Mars, as the Roman god of war, is one of the most important deities in the Roman pantheon. He was originally a god of agriculture, but over time his association with war and military prowess became more prominent. Mars was seen as a powerful and fierce warrior, and his festivals were celebrated with parades, chariot races, and gladiatorial contests. In terms of his mythological origins, Mars was considered to be the son of Jupiter and Juno. He was also associated with the wolf, which was considered a symbol of military prowess and ferocity. And the Indo-European root of this is also linked to the Roman word cohors, which was a term used to describe a military unit made up of infantry soldiers. Initially, Mars likely served as a thunderer or storm deity, which accounts for some of his diverse attributes concerning fertility. This aspect was later taken over by other gods in the Roman pantheon, such as his father Jupiter. The spear represents Mars's instrument, much like how Jupiter wields the lightning bolt. This is something we can also see with Odin's Gungnir, this thunder god connection. And Mars's further connection to the Salian wolves, thus further highlighting the Koryos and Trito connection of this ancient Roman tradition. Where another important aspect of Mars, whose mother is Juno, meaning to rejuvenate, is the types of offerings he received. While some of his cult sacrifices included oxen, Mars was more commonly offered bulls, either singly, in multiples, or in combination with other animals. Juno, as mother goddess, was connected with the idea of vital force, the fullness of vital energy, and eternal youthfulness. And she's allied with the warriors of Mars, and also thus linked to the conquering of enemies. And she herself is also a warrior, fertilizer, and sovereign protectress. The Lupercalia is also linked to her, led by wolf priests. And the Lupercal, named after the Latin word lupa, meaning female wolf, was a cave situated at the southwest base of Rome's Palatine Hill. According to the legendary founding tale of Rome, the twin brothers Romulus and Remus were discovered in the cave and nursed by a she-wolf until the shepherd Faustulus rescued them. The Luperci, priest of the rustic god Faunus, performed rituals associated with the Lupercalia festival at the cave, a tradition that persisted from the early days of the city until at least 494 AD. The Roman Senate considered the Lupercalia crucial for the safety and well-being of Rome. And the term Lupercalia was in the ancient days thought to be connected to the ancient Greek festival of the Arcadian Lycaea, a celebration associated with wolves. While the festival's name likely stems from lupus, meaning wolf, the exact etymology and significance remain unclear. And the association with wolves may be related to the symbolic role of a predatory animal in male rites of passage. The Lupercalia boasted its own priesthood, the Luperci as well, or Brothers of the Wolf, whose establishment and rites were attributed either to the Arcadian culture hero Evander or to the shepherd twins Romulus and Remus. And the Luperci were typically young men, usually aged between 20 and 30. Within this ritual, the wolf priests, who represented ancestors, brought purification to the community from the underworld. This happened within the Lupercal cave, which acted as a passage to the underworld. The Luperci, wolf followers, came out of the cave at the beginning of their run and returned there at the end of it. And symbolically, the Luperci arrived from the underworld, connected to the ancestors where the purification ritual took place, echoing the return of the Koryos. The Lupercal cave served in that sense as a passage to the underworld, and the Luperci emerged from and returned to it during the ritual. Where at the Lupercal altar, a male goat or goats and a dog were sacrificed by one of the Luperci, supervised by the Flamen Dialis, Jupiter's chief priest. Salted meal cakes prepared by the Vestal Virgins were also offered. Following the blood sacrifice, two Luperci approached the altar, their foreheads anointed with blood and then cleansed with wool soaked in milk. The sacrificial feast ensued, after which the Luperci cut tongues, called febra, from the flayed animal skin and ran naked or nearly so along the old Palatine boundary in an anti-clockwise direction. And this fertility rite involved the goatskin-clad Luperci striking women who sought to conceive. And it was on February 15th that the Lupercalia festival took place, also involving Juno as Juno Lucina, associated with purification and fertility. Juno Lucina was a multifaceted deity embodying sovereignty, martial prowess, and fertility. A temple dedicated to Juno Lucina was erected in 375 BC in the sacred grove dedicated to the goddess from ancient times. She would oversee this cave ritual and be an important guiding figure, being the figure that rejuvenates them and guides them through this purification ritual, facing what is within the underworld. Symbolically, from a Jungian lens, we can see with this her as the anima, guiding them as mediator of the unconscious, facilitating through this ritual a rebirth and revitalization of the individual. Such a death and rebirth ritual connected to the ancestors also took place in the Koryos ritual as well, which was linked to the return of the Koryos warrior band into the community. And these type of death and rebirth rituals are then also key for the well-being of both the individual and the community. And her role as a sovereignty goddess overseeing this ritual with her link to rejuvenation then also makes a lot of sense, ensuring the well-being of the community. Further, regarding Juno, when the community was in a dire situation, since the king, divine or human, had failed to appear or had fled, she would intervene as sovereign goddess. In a Proto-Indo-European lens, such a figure has been linked also to the mother of the divine twins, though in the Roman tradition, the twins are instead born under Mars and is countered Venus, where Juno is the sovereignty goddess. Cows were the animals mostly sacrificed to her, as these were her sacred animals. The tibia, a Roman variant of the aulos, was also often played at such sacrifices to ward off ill influences, especially in connection to animal sacrifice. Her cult included the annual feeding of a sacred snake with barley cakes by virgin maidens, and the snake dwelt in a deep cave within the precinct of the temple. And Juno was thus also associated with the Quirites, and is also with Quirinus, in the admission into the Curia, assembly of warriors, where Romulus and Remus were finally also known to have, in another story, fought against cattle thieves to retrieve cattle that was stolen. Other figures of note linked to Mars are the Arval brothers, who were a body of priests who offered annual sacrifices to the Lares. And these are guardian deities in ancient Roman religion. And their origin is uncertain, but they are often seen as hero ancestors. The Arval brothers, in their priestly role, also would besiege Mars to protect against rust, called lues, a term with a dual significance referring to both wheat fungus and the corrosive red oxides that could harm metal. And these threats pose dangers to iron-formed tools and weaponry alike. And in the hymn that survived, the Arval brothers depicted Mars as ferus, embodying a savage or feral nature akin to that of a wild animal, from a Jungian lens representing the shadow. The Arval brothers would next to this also dance and sing in honor of the goddess Ceres. Where Mars's potential for savagery also finds expression in his enigmatic associations with untamed woodlands, suggesting he might have originally been regarded as a god of the wild beyond the confines established by human civilization and as a force that required appeasement. We can also see this with Cato, where in his work on farming, he invoked Mars Silvanus for a ritual to be performed in Silva, the woods, an uncultivated area that, if not kept in check, could encroach upon the fields necessary for crops. Mars's identity as an agricultural deity might stem solely from his role as a defender and protector, or could be inseparable from his warrior nature. For instance, the leaping of his armed priestess Salii was believed to hasten crop growth, and these priests would dance and sing while moving through the city in honor of Mars. One deity that has been largely forgotten, however, is the god Quirinus. He's not only a god, but a soter, meaning savior, represented also as the person who founded the state and is connected to the ancestors. He's depicted as both wearing warrior and priestly clothes, and is both the deity for the highest and lowest in society. The Quirinalia, the last day of the Fornacalia festival in ancient Rome, was also known as the Feast of Fools. This day was associated with a light-hearted and playful atmosphere, and it was customary for people to wear masks and engage in merrymaking. Quirinus is also not only connected to the king and leader, but also to the outcasts, similarly as Odin, and functions here as a sort of mediating deity, which furthers the process of societal renewal, bringing the highest and lowest together. And the Quirinalia is the day Quirinus is honored to protect the Roman people. The festival, likely officially, began at sundown on March 16th, with a sacrifice occurring at sunrise. It is likely the Flamen Quirinalis led this ceremony, with the Salii also being involved. It is probable that this festival tied into Parentalia, where dead relatives were honored as well. Quirinus in that sense is the divine father of the Roman people, and therefore this day he is recognized as the father of Rome and honored in this capacity alongside all fathers and mothers who have left the mortal world. Myrtle is also important to his cult. Historically, in front of his main temple, two myrtles grew, one called patrician, the other plebeian. Quirinus' name being connected to the oak tree, meaning he who wields the oaken spear, where in a more ancient form, Quirinus as king-priest figure links back to the more ancient Manu, where in the oldest part of Rome there were also gates built into the Servian walls, which became the Porta Capina gate. There were two constructed pillars in this gate that symbolized Janus Quiriatius and Juno Sororia, both linked to the transition from child to adult. Now, when it comes to Mars again, there are also a few important feast days dedicated to Mars. These were February 27th, the Equiraria, with chariot/horse races. March 1st, Mars's Dies Natalis, or birthday, also sacred to his mother Juno. March 14th, a second Equiraria with chariot races, with also on March 14th or 15th, Mamuralia, a New Year festival when Mamurius Veturius, representing the old Mars of the past year, was driven out. March 17th, an Agonalia or Agonomium Martiale, an obscure observance held at various times for different deities. March 23rd, the Tubi Lustrium, a purification ritual for the deploying army, where on October 15th, the ritual of the October Horse, involving a chariot race and Rome's only known horse sacrifice, would take place. A possible remainder of the Proto-Indo-European horse sacrifice linked to the inauguration of a member into the warrior caste, with finally on October 19th, the Armi Lustrium would take place, which is about the purification of arms. Now, when it comes to the ancient Roman rite of the October Horse, well, one of a winning pair of chariot racing horses was sacrificed in this ritual. The October Horse ritual has been deeply analyzed by scholars, drawing connections to other Indo-European horse sacrifice traditions like the Vedic Ashvamedha. Notably, these practices share a thematic focus on kingship, and while the contested battle for ownership of the horse's head may retain echoes of Rome's early monarchical era, the fusion of agriculture and war in the October Horse ceremony is a hallmark of the Roman Republic. Examining the sacred landscape associated with the ritual and considering Mars's role in various equestrian celebrations, there emerges a nuanced narrative that suggests elements of youth initiation and rebirth rites. Where on another note, when it comes to such initiation rites, the deity Janus was also connected to Quirinus, whose priests are known for throwing spears above people. So where Mars could be seen as the leader of the Koryos outside the city walls, Quirinus could thus be associated with the tribe and the ancestors. Quirinus also represented the figure that presided over all men of the tribe, regardless of social class, as any Roman would fall under Quirinus, and the rite of passage probably linked to becoming part of the assembly of all Roman people. So in that sense, in an archaic sense, representing the man of the tribe.